Well, let's start right there with my next guest, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. The first time I've seen you in that role, so congratulations and great to see you.
Thank you, Harris.
I'm anxious to get your reaction from the former DHS Secretary Johnson, basically asking why this, why now?
I'm so glad that you brought up President Obama. Then Senator Obama, back in 2006, said that mass immigration depressed blue-collar wages. Not only that, you have Senator Bernie Sanders, who has said the same thing. Paul Krugman, a liberal economist from the New York Times, has said exactly what President Trump has said, that immigration depresses American workers' wages and takes jobs away. So it's really interesting when Trump derangement syndrome becomes so powerful that you can disown all prior statements and an entire career of defending American workers, all because now this has President Trump's name on it.
We've heard from others, Senator Lindsey Graham and some who are questioning the timing, perhaps, of this. I'm curious to know, and I hear you rattling off some of those things that we did hear the former president say, but what current evidence do we have today that we even have enough people coming over the border with or into the country, wherever they're coming from, with all of the changes that the president has made since the beginning of his presidency, that they would be able to then step into the shoes of the 22 million people who've lost their jobs? What evidence is it that there's like a one-on-one match there and that those jobs coming back are in jeopardy because of those people coming in?
Well, first, I want to emphasize that President Trump approached this in a very smart and measured way. This affects green card holders, not temporary workers. So hotels, for instance, landscapers, these types of jobs will not be affected. But what President Trump has said is this: we're at a time where the American worker must come first. I sit in the Oval Office with him, across from him, watching him make these decisions, and he has a singular focus: the health of the American people and the economic well-being. This is a smart and measured response that he took. And guess what? 81% of America's with them, according to Pew. So what a great moment when you can say the American people stand with the president to the tune of 81%.
I guess the follow-up to that would be, I could understand, and I'm wondering why maybe this part of the argument hasn't come up as such from you or the president that I've seen, and that is, and I think most of the American people would get this too, it's the access and an already overburdened healthcare system that might be along the lines of why the president may have looked at this. I'm curious, is that part of the argument that the president makes as he gets ready to sign an executive order today?
Undoubtedly, the healthcare system is part of this, also the safety of the American people. This president has taken bold, unprecedented action from the beginning. This immigration executive order is just another piece of that. But you go back to early January, his travel restrictions, there was not a single death in the United States from coronavirus, and he put in place travel restrictions, the same ones Nancy Pelosi was trying to take away his presidential authority to do on Capitol Hill. So you have the Democrats who have slow-walked this, and a president who has been laser-like focus on protecting the health of the American people and restarting the American economy.
Well, and when I hear you that, I just want to say the reason I asked that question, too, is because when the president's critics say that it seems political only tying it to jobs, there could possibly be some other reasons, and I hadn't heard them, so I'm glad you said that. Here's a quote. Mr. Trump's real calculation here is political. The country is worried, and Mr. Trump's core supporters will cheer with his approval rating, and this, of course, in the Wall Street Journal, down. Mr. Trump may feel the need to return to one of his favorite 2016 themes, and of course, we do know that to be immigration. Kayleigh?
No, this is not political at all. This is practical, and so practical. I cited the one poll, 81% Pew supporting this. There are other polls, USA Today, Ipsos, all of them confirm the same thing, that this is common sense. The American people can very well understand when Americans need jobs, Americans must come first. It's a very basic concept. It's one that then Senator Obama got. It's one that Senator Bernie Sanders used to get before they did an about face because President Trump was the one taking the measure.
Real quickly, and then we're going to move on. What promise is there that this is going to be actually a 60-day situation and that it's temporary? I mean, I don't know what mainly will change with this pandemic, as doctors are now saying, even the CDC director are saying, look, we could see a second wave, it could be worse. So how do we know that this isn't going to be permanent with regard to immigration?
First, let me address that comment from the CDC director, Dr. Redfield. I was on the phone with him just before I walked out here. The mainstream media has been taking him out of context, as they so often do to Trump administration officials. What he was trying to say was this: everyone get your flu shot. The flu comes back in the fall. Be smart, American people. That's what he was saying, but leave it to CNN and some of the other networks to really take those comments out of context. But as with regard to the 60-day period, at that point, the president will reassess, and he'll be the best person to determine whether 60 days extends beyond 60 days.
All right, let's move to this. There are, as you know, and we probably have some video or even live pictures, those protests in the streets of some cities across the country because they don't like the stay-at-home restrictions. Some of them saying they feel like they go too far. The list today: Virginia, New York, Utah, Tennessee, and then by May 2nd, we'll see plans in Kansas and other areas to come on board as well. The president is offering a new defense of these demonstrators. Let's watch, and then I'll come back to you, Kayleigh.
I've watched some of the protests, not in great detail, but I've seen that, and they're separated. There's a lot of space in between. I mean, they're watching, believe it or not, they're doing social distancing, if you can believe it. Look, people, they want to get back to work. They got to make a living. They have to take care of their family. They don't want to do this.
However, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says the president's support for these rallies, in his opinion, is dangerous.
I'm very disappointed with the rhetoric and messaging coming from the president. When he tweets out liberate Michigan or liberate Minnesota or liberate Virginia, he's fomenting protest, and I hate to say that is fomenting some violence. And I'm very concerned about what that might mean for the country if he keeps doing things like that.
First of all, your reaction to Governor Pritzker.
Yeah, I think that's a ridiculous assertion there that he made. Guess what? We have a president who believes in the First Amendment, who believes in the right for people to protest, like some of these folks you're hearing right over my shoulder. That's a constitutional right. And I know one Democrat governor out there said, oh, I don't care much for the Bill of Rights. Well, guess what? This president does. There's a way to safely articulate your opinion with social distancing, and that's what the president supports. And I encourage all governors, believe in the Bill of Rights. It's been around for a while, and it's a pretty great document.
I'm so glad that you brought up social distancing, because we've been covering this every day at 1 p.m. Eastern on Outnumbered Overtime. We've been showing the rallies. And you saw the cars, just you may not be able to see it, Kayleigh, but our viewers could see the cars from the most recent one. I think that was Virginia. Here in New York, they've got protests as well, and the governor has asked, or the staff has asked, please, if you're going to come in your cars or stay away from each other. But quite frankly, we have seen a lot of people huddled, no masks, no distancing, and it goes against what the president has said. It's so ironic that they are there, the president is supporting them. Is he going to call on them to actually do what he's telling them to do and be safe?
Well, the president's encouraged all Americans to engage in social distancing, to abide by the guidelines that our medical experts have put forward. That's got
to include the protesters.
That stands for all Americans, but nevertheless, they have a right to be out there. It's, you know, we're at a point where now the country's beginning to reopen. Americans want to see this country reopen safely. Absolutely abide by the social distancing guidelines, but you still have a right to call out the governor of Virginia for his onerous gun laws, and you still have a right to call out other governors who have put in place measures that don't make a whole lot of medical sense, like allowing the sale of alcohol, but not that of seeds.
Yeah, you can't grow the seeds that you could buy off the shelf in your own garden. You can't buy paint. I know a lot of people have pushed against it. I just worry about their health as they're out there huddled together. Kayleigh McEnany, thank you so very much for joining me the first time since you've been in your new role on Overtime. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Harris.